Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Lemko and this is Sid Meier's Civilization 6 Rise and Fall. Well, if that isn't a mouthful, I don't know what is. This is the expansion to Civilization 6 that came out about a year and a half ago. If you are curious about the base game of Civilization 6 and whether or not that is any good, I suggest you check out our review of that by pressing the little white icon in the top right of the video or the link in the description down below, and that should tell you everything you need to know about the base game. That said, it's been a while, so here is Civilization 6 Rise and Fall. As we dive into gameplay, this video doesn't have an options moment because obviously as an expansion it doesn't really change anything in terms of options or gameplay, but there are a few visual tweaks and changes the game has made in terms of visual clarity. Some new tile sets look a little bit different, some new additional things in the map look a little bit different, things have been cleaned up a little, things have been improved a little visually and in terms of visual fidelity, which is always a very welcome thing. All in all though, nothing much has changed. The game still is very processor intense, so if you are running a later generation processor, a bit of an older unit, you'll mostly notice it in the time it takes you to complete turns. Visually though, everything maxed out, the game still runs a smooth 60 FPS even in hyper late game situations with hundreds of things happening at any time. Then again, with a game like Civilization 6, it's more about the processor than it is about the graphics card, and you can run it in a wide range of systems. Nothing really changed from the base game. But what did the expansion change then from all its various mechanics and implementations? As with any Civilization's expansion, this adds new systems to the game, it changes existing systems up to an extent, but it doesn't really change the core gameplay loop. So if you previously didn't like the district idea of Civilization 6, if you didn't like the way they do trade routes, if you didn't like the way they do a variety of different combat mechanics, such as the way the new unit corpses work, where you can stack multiple units in a single tile to create a sort of stronger unit, if you didn't like that, you're not gonna get any changes in Civilization 6 Rise and Fall regarding those mechanics. What you will be getting is a couple of new and interesting ideas. The first and foremost of these is the loyalty system, which is a nice little addition, but does have a couple of drawbacks to the pacing of the title. First things first, the loyalty system basically means that your city has a loyalty to you or someone else, obviously if it's an opponent, and this loyalty can be affected. The primary ways to affect this loyalty are things like spies, things like cultural or religious pressure that reduces the enemy's loyalty and can result in the city switching sides, or if a city has few amenities, if the city is hungry, if the city can't grow, loyalty will also decrease and the city might rebel and go independent. Obviously, some other player or an AI could swoop that up for themselves if they can exert the pressure needed. This adds a little bit of the same idea Civilization 5 had with happiness into a localized stat per city that really does improve things quite a bit more interesting in terms of making sure that the expansion and land grab that was very common at the start of the game is a little bit curbed, because you have to pay attention that the cities you're building you can actually hold on to outside of a Dominion player just waltzing over you. I like this addition. It fine-tunes the early game city sprawl that we see in many matches of Civ 6 and should hopefully result in a more staged and progressive staging forward across the world map for Civilizations. Pretty damn good. The drawback here, of course, is the fact that you have to pay attention to this additional little nugget, and most of the time it doesn't really matter. If you run your cities, if you run your empire in any competent manner, and honestly you should, you're never really going to have to worry about loyalty in any real regard. The only time this becomes a real concern is when you are indeed facing a Dominion player or playing as a Dominion player, going for that total world domination victory and are taking over enemy cities. And if you're trying to rush that, if you're trying to push forward before the enemy can recover or rebuild because you took their cities and they're sort of trying to build new armies, then it's very possible that you're pushing too much too far and end up losing cities behind you while they rebel against you. Pretty much a pretty decent mechanic. Tying into the mechanic are the governors, and while I like the idea of the governors, they are mostly irrelevant. Let me explain what happens here. Whenever you do some progress in your various cultural progression tiers of the game's research tree, you unlock governor titles. And there are 7 governors that each have a variety of abilities, and you can assign these to a city or even reassign them to a different city based on their proficiencies. So there's one governor that if you upgrade him far enough with various new titles you get, will unlock upgrade bonuses for your city, maintenance bonuses for your city, will increase defensive bonuses for your city, will increase things like build speed or amenities, or even increase the number of envoys to a city-state you might have. Pretty damn cool. They also, which is their primary focus, are there to combat the lack of loyalty your city would have by cultural pressure from outside. But as soon as you plop one down in a city that might get culturally pressured, the cultural pressure mostly disappears and you don't have to worry about loyalty ever again. So unless you have a ton of cities, just plop down a governor whenever you have a city that might get affected by an enemy player's empire being close by, or religion, or something else, and you will have nothing to worry about. That said, the upgrades themselves though on these governors aren't really great, and this is my main issue with the governors. Many of them are really specific with some very minor bonuses or very big bonuses depending on the scenario. You'll have something like a governor giving you a 30% production increase bonus, but only when you're building spaceship parts, which is fairly useless 99% of the time, and only useful if you're ever going for a science victory. Another governor will allow you to land grab faster by expanding tiles faster, but even that is fairly limited in the later stages of the game when borders are starting to crush one another, so that drops off immensely fast. And there are multiple governors like this and multiple tiers of each governor where the upgrades, well, you're never going to have any benefit to them, so it's a really big chore to just manage them at all, and by the point you set them up and you put them in the city you want them in, you'll probably never touch them again in most games, which is definitely a bit of a shame. I would have liked them to do more with the governors, more with the idea of micromanaging your cities through these representatives of your divine will. That said, it adds another layer to the game, which is the light ages and dark ages. And this is sort of the way Civ 6 does things in general. Every step of the way, you have some minor goals you can work towards to improve your own overall achievement. So instead of working towards a big goal like the science victory and pushing towards that goal the entire game, Civ 6 has always tried to add minor goals. Building a district, getting a great person, building a new city. All these minor little goals, these little upgrades, little achievements you get throughout the match are rewarding. And that they have done again with an additional tier on that with the Dark Ages or Golden Ages. Everything you do in the game, especially early on in the game, gives you some era points. These era points accumulate up to a total stack for that era. So if you're in the classical era and you go out and explore, you'll find some villages that are from NPCs, much like barbarian villages. You can go to these villages and you'll get a boost. If you build a wonder, you'll get a boost. If you're the first person to enter the classic era, you'll get a few era points. If you recruit a great person, you'll get a few era points. And later down the line, you can also specialize in which things should give you era points on top of that. With enough era points, the next era for your empire will be either a normal age, a golden age, or a dark age. Well, the names really do tell everything there is to it, don't they? A dark age means you get some negative modifiers and your overall production is reduced. A golden age means you get improved modifiers and much of your production, diplomacy, and all these things like that are improved. A normal age, well, has the same modifiers as it normally did previous to the expansion. That said, these upgrades and negatives are not that impressive, and the added incentive to get these upgrades really isn't there. These minor achievements might seem interesting, but by the later stages of the game, you have to actively work towards getting a golden age, and the payoff really isn't worth the investment you do to get that golden age in all these secondary things you need to do. So I would have liked them to have either a greater range of benefits and negatives to your empire, or I would have liked them to add at least something unique when you achieve that, or at least change the way the progression works, because right now, if you're missing 1 point from being away from the golden age, even though you've invested a ton into that, you'll get none of the benefits from all the extra stuff you did, because most of the stuff you do, you either already are doing or have to go out of your way to do those things, like building wonders or recruiting great people or exploring the world in various different manners. So I would have liked them to tweak that to be a little more gradual and less of a hard cutoff when you get a benefit or a negative. Not the greatest implementation, and overall a pretty irrelevant system, which is also where it ties into the main issue I have with the game, and that is still the AI. And that also ties into the new emergency system. So new emergencies are things that involve the world map. So maybe a player is crushing everyone else, and you'll get an emergency alliance, people trying to deal with that. And it's great in theory, especially if you're playing with friends or you're playing online multiplayer matches, this might seem very good. But in single player with the AI, they are utterly useless in any scenario where you need them to do anything. The AI is still not much better than it was in the original Civ 6, and this is going to be the biggest downer of this expansion. A large part of what I hoped this expansion would have done, in fact, if it was the only thing this expansion did, I would have still recommended it, is improve the AI immensely, because right now the AI still isn't great. It'll still declare war on you for no particular reason, even knowing it can't win. It'll still try to get trade agreements that are ridiculous beyond proportion, refuse trade agreements that are well in their favor, try to curry favor with enemies they just had a war with, and then attack city-states that they never are able going to hold. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The AI is flawed in many ways. Even playing on the highest difficulty settings of like Emperor, you are not going to see many uses out of the AI. Obviously, if you're playing on lower difficulty settings, the AI has always been dumbed down, and the AI cheats immensely to compensate for that, but it's still not great, and you'll still be mostly annoyed at the AI instead of being challenged or feeling like the AI is somebody there making coherent, competent decisions within their empire. They're not, and that is a damn shame, which implies for the emergency system as well, because when that happens and you band together to deal with it, even though there might be 3 or 4 AI players along with you in that emergency being involved, you're still on your own because the AI, not that useful. So there are a couple other things that the game has added that are minor. They've added a couple of new civilizations, they've added some new cards for the various new policies you have, and there's quite a few interesting things they've added to nuance things around. But the core gameplay loop of the game is still Civilization 6, and if you didn't like that, you're not going to like this expansion by any big manner. I personally, and if you watch my review, you notice, enjoyed Civilization 6 immensely, outside of the issues I had with the AI. Civilization 6 adds so many more nuanced little things that I always hated about Civilization 5, and the way the game changes this in the expansion by curbing early game sprawl, by curbing a massive overpowering of the Dominion victory being the easiest way forward in most scenarios, it adds more nuance, it adds more ability for you to expand, explore, and figure out different ways of playing the game. A smaller empire now is actually useful because you have better control, and you might still get benefits you otherwise would not by the new policy cards because you'll have fewer but larger cities. Overall, I like the general improvements the expansion has made to Civilization 6. The new emergencies are fun, AI is kind of annoying. Governors are a nice addition, but mainly irrelevant. Loyalty is an amazing mechanic, but here again the AI has some flaws where it doesn't utilize it properly. And nonetheless, it is still fun. The new additional empires, the new additional policy cards, the addition of new ideas the game adds in terms of emergencies, in terms of governors, in terms of loyalty, is pretty damn cool, adds more nuance to the game, and creates more enjoyment, in my opinion, in the matches that previously mostly revolved around grabbing as much land as you can, as often as you can. Even minor things like the introduction of additional era bonuses for those era points in the early eras of the game means that you'll be exploring the map much faster, and exploring the map is much more important early on in the game. So even there, the focus shifts away from being your little turtle and just building as many settlers as you can into being this empire that tries to bring its name forward across allies, across enemies, and across many borders. Pretty damn solid. Overall, most of the major flaws people have with Civilization 6 have not been resolved in this expansion, and that flaw is mostly the AI, which is still a little wonky. But other than that, the core ideas of Civilization 6 have been expanded, and they are pretty damn fun. If you enjoyed Civ 6, there is no reason not to get Civilization 6 Rise and Fall. Though at 30 euros or your regional equivalent, that might be a little bit of a steep price to pay straight up unless you really like Civ 6. And if you're just lukewarm about Civ 6, if you've played it and enjoyed it a bit, then I might suggest waiting on a sale for this expansion. Overall, a great addition, pretty solid expansion to a pretty solid game. All in all, Sid Meier's Civilization 6 Rise and Fall is a solid title, and you can check it out on Steam with a link in the description down below. So thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press that like button down below. If you didn't like this video, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose, and leave a comment. Tell us what you think about Civ 6 Rise and Fall and its AI issues, and tell us about the other things you might like or dislike about the game. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you like what we do here on GuyLogicGaming and you want to see more content, just press that subscribe button down below and I will deliver. So until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogicGaming.